Android users, you can now have TYT in the palm of your hand. Our TYT app is available for download in the Google Play Store. Just go to tyt.com/app to find out more.
Donald Trump has officially reimposed economic sanctions on Iran. Now, this follows some of Trump's warlike rhetoric on Twitter geared toward Iran, and he did essentially pull out of the Iran nuclear deal, which was negotiated by President Barack Obama back in 2015. Europe is very much against what's going on right now, but here are the updates in terms of these sanctions. So Trump said, quote, "As we continue applying maximum economic pressure on the Iranian regime, I remain open to reaching a more comprehensive deal that addresses the full range of the regime's malign activities, including its ballistic missile program and its support for terrorism." I mean, there's no mention of US support of terrorism when it's Saudi Arabia conducting the terroristic acts, but nonetheless, I'll move on. Trump is also planning to renew other sanctions in 3 months, including ones targeting Iran's lucrative oil industry. So there are more sanctions that are set to take place or take effect in November of this year. But so far, the economic sanctions have begun.
So here's what I get out of this story. There must be some powerful oil lobbyists doing a lot of work inside the Trump administration. And I'll tell you why. So right now, Iran has not broken the deal. We broke it, but it's not just us and Iran. If we had broken it, then Iran would be free to break it anyway because it doesn't exist anymore. But there's actually other parties involved. The European countries are allies, but also Russia and others involved. So those players say they deeply regret that America broke the deal and violated its terms, but they are still willing to abide by the deal. So as far as we know, so is Iran. So in terms of the actions, Iran is not pushing towards war. So they say one thing that was a little aggressive, we are the mother of peace, but if you attack us, we'll be the mother of wars. Trump loses it and does this maniacal tweet, etc. So you could say, hey, forces pushing for war are winning here, and I think that's true. But if you notice in Trump's tweet, he also talked about, hey, look, I'll sit down with them, which is great. Which is, he should have never ripped up the deal in the first place. It was a perfectly good deal. All of our allies agree, etc. But he's willing to sit with them, fine. That's good news. But they specifically then talked about sanctions about their energy sector and their oil. Now, what will that do? If US has sanctions on Iranian oil, it will limit the supply of oil, thereby increasing the price of oil.
Yep.
Now, this is the second action in a week that massively helps oil companies. The second was totally unrelated to this issue. We talked about it last week. It was how he was going to rip up the fuel standards for cars. Now you think, no, that's for the car manufacturers. No, the car manufacturers at this point say, don't do that. That's gonna give us two different rules. We don't want that, it's gonna give us uncertainty. But what it would do is create demand for a lot more oil because the cars are not fuel efficient. Billions of dollars in oil. So two decisions, seemingly nothing to do with each other, but the common theme is oil companies are the big winners here. My guess is if you looked a little bit more into it, and that's why Trump administration is one of the worst in transparency and are trying to make sure we cannot find out who they met with. My guess is that some oil lobbies have been doing some substantial work inside the White House recently.
Yeah, that's a really good guess, especially when you take all of this in the context of what he's trying to do with fuel efficiency standards. Because remember, that will increase our reliance on oil, right? And that will make oil companies incredibly happy. And when that story broke, oil companies were the only industry that was happy about Trump ripping up those fuel efficiency standards. The car industry, as Cenk correctly mentioned, was not in favor of it because now there's gonna be this ongoing legal battle between some of the blue states that want efficient vehicles and the federal government, which is essentially ripping up fuel efficiency standards. Now, just to point to Trump's maniacal tweet against Iran. Earlier he had tweeted, to Iranian President Rouhani, never ever threaten the United States again or you will suffer consequences the likes of which few throughout history have ever suffered before. We are no longer a country that will stand for your demented words of violence and death. Be cautious. So as you can see, all caps, very intense. And it's fascinating how he treats some countries while giving other countries a complete pass when they threaten us. An example of that would be Russia, where they essentially showed a video during Vladimir Putin's address to Russia showing nukes hitting Tampa, Florida. It was a simulation, but here's what he essentially showed everyone in the world, and Trump said nothing about it.
And they hit Florida. So Iranians do not have nuclear weapons. The Russians do. The Iranians did not say we're going to launch nukes against you. The Russians did a simulation where they launched nukes against us. That was during Putin's annual address to the country's Federal Assembly. And what's in Florida? Well, a couple of things. One is United States Central Command directly threatening our Central Command. By the way, another thing that's in Florida is Mar-a-Lago. But Trump said nothing about that. Nothing about never threaten us, nothing about how dare you, nothing about your nukes, nothing about attacking Florida, nothing at all. So when the oil companies have money to make, all of a sudden, all caps, don't you dare threaten us. When the Russians go, here's our missiles hitting Florida, rub it in your face. Sorry, sir, yes, sir, of course, Mr. Putin, sir, yes, sir. Gee, I wonder what Donald Trump's interests are. I can't quite tell.
And just quickly going back to the whole oil issue. Remember, Germany made a deal with Russia to essentially build another pipeline that would send oil from Russia to Germany. And Trump specifically targeted Angela Merkel, right? The leader of Germany over that issue. But there was absolutely no pressure toward Vladimir Putin. No anger toward Vladimir Putin for making that deal. All of the anger and intensity was directed toward Angela Merkel, and I just thought that was fascinating.
So because he can't criticize Putin, gee, I wonder why. That would Putin him in trouble. But Anna, that's a great point because I hadn't thought of that. That's actually the third time that he helps the oil companies, right? Do not do deals where our oil companies are circumvented. Don't do that because I really care about foreign policy. I mean, and it's Russia doing the deal, but I can't criticize Russia. So I'm going to instead viciously attack our allies. So, and here he is, by the way, when he rips up the Iranian deal, he also attacks our allies because our allies support that deal, want us to abide by that deal and our word that we gave. But he thinks, who cares? I got a swamp to run. Where's my oil lobbyists? 2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below. Then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.